Tourists are dancing and singing on the open deck of a cruise boat. The water is calm, the mood is celebratory, and the trip feels like any other routine joyride. Then the atmosphere shifts. A violent storm hits without warning. The singing stops, replaced by shouting as waves begin to crash over the side, and the camera cuts to black. This was the final footage recorded aboard the Narmada Queen. A standard 45-minute tour on a government-managed vessel ended with 13 people dead. To understand how a routine outing became a mass casualty event, we have to look at the chain of safety systems that were ignored long before the boat ever left the dock. The disaster occurred at the Bargi Dam Reservoir, a major tourist destination on the Narmada River near Jabalpur. The vessel involved was the Narmada Queen, a passenger cruise boat operated as part of the state's tourism initiatives. The India Meteorological Department is responsible for issuing regional weather alerts intended to stop water activities when conditions become dangerous. On the morning of April 30th, the department issued a yellow alert for the district, specifically warning of incoming thunderstorms and wind gusts reaching 50 kilometers per hour. Despite this formal warning, the boat's operators chose to proceed. At 5:16 p.m., the Narmada Queen launched directly into the path of the approaching storm. Safety protocols for this cruise mandate a minimum crew of 3, 1 pilot and 2 helpers to manage the vessel and its passengers. When the Narmada Queen departed that evening, it was understaffed. Only the pilot and a single helper were on board to manage over 40 passengers as the weather began to deteriorate. Internal records later revealed that the resort management had already flagged this cruise boat as structurally unfit for water operations months before the accident. When the storm hit and waves began flooding the lower deck, the passengers realized they had not been issued life jackets upon boarding. The safety gear was locked inside a ground floor storeroom. Even worse, the jackets were still sealed inside their original plastic packaging. As the boat began to tilt, crew and passengers had to break the storeroom lock. In the total panic that followed, people had to fight over the gear, desperately tearing through the plastic to free the life jackets as water rose around them. By failing to distribute the life jackets at the dock, the operators ensured that a manageable weather event would become a desperate struggle for survival. This diagram shows the physics of boat stability. A vessel stays upright when its center of gravity, the point where its weight is concentrated, remains low and close to the water. When the storm waves began to breach the lower deck, the incoming water caused the vessel to sway violently. Fearing they would be trapped below, the passengers fled to the upper deck all at once. This sudden movement pulled the boat's center of gravity drastically upward. The boat was now top-heavy and unstable. When a strong gust of wind hit the side of the vessel, it pushed the vessel past its tipping point. The storm created the conditions, but the sudden shift in weight caused by the passengers' panic is what caused the Narmada Queen to overturn in seconds. 41 people were suddenly thrown into the reservoir. There were no official state rescue teams on site to help. The only people close enough to help were laborers working on a nearby water project for the Jal Jeevan mission. These laborers waded into the rough water and formed a human chain, throwing ropes out to the passengers and pulling them toward the rocky shore. Without the immediate response from these workers, the death toll would have been significantly higher, as official state rescue teams did not arrive until long after the boat had sunk. Of the 13 people who died, 2 were a mother and her 4-year-old son, found drowned while attempting to share a single life jacket. Survivors reported that even after reaching land, the trauma continued. Local private hospitals charged them thousands of rupees for basic first aid, while they were still in shock from the capsize. Following the public outcry, Chief Minister Mohan Yadav fired 3 staff members, suspended the resort manager, and announced financial compensation for the victims' families. The National Disaster Response Force eventually arrived at the dam, though their role was limited to recovering bodies after the survival window had already closed. The government's response was entirely reactive, punishing staff and issuing payments only after the safety protocols failed. The disaster at Jabalpur was built on a series of specific failures: the ignored weather alert, the understaffed crew, and the locked safety equipment. Government-run tourism often creates an assumption of safety, leading passengers to trust that protocols are being followed behind the scenes. To stay safe, passengers must take their own precautions. Never board a boat without demanding a life jacket and wearing it, regardless of the weather. The Narmada Queen capsized because the operators ignored every warning they received. In the end, the system failed the people who trusted it most.